Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by wealthy bad guys and poorly trained henchmen. I guess you're going for quantity, not quality. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by The Finder Outer, the detective with no powers, no partners, and no problem. He'll just solve the case by finding out. CW's The Finder Outer. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And this is a film podcast where we, as filmmakers, actors, writers, producers, look at films and see what we would do different and how it could be 10 times better. Just kidding. No, we look at what other actual professionals are doing. Sometimes. But more often than not, we're just kind of enjoying the ride. I know movies are pretty easy to watch in our pop culture, but watching it with the aspect of like how they do that or why did they do that, and sometimes how things intertwine that you don't imagine they'll intertwine. Like the story will sometimes be really well reflected in some camera movement or the way they light it, and it all plays into communicating a feeling or a moment, or hopefully something even bigger about the story itself. And those are the fun things. Like I feel like I caught some fun things in today's show, but yeah, I don't know. You're pretty good about just watching a movie. And this is one of the things I really appreciate about you, because
turning my brain off? Yeah, I'm great at that.
Well, what's great about it is,
no, I am.
Well, what I find remarkable about it is we'll be talking about a movie or we'll walk out of a movie and you will remember so much more of the movie than I will. And you'll usually trigger memories and I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. But normally I'm very much the kind of moviegoer where I walk out of the movie and the only thing I can remember is how it ended. Like I don't remember almost anything else until I really start working at it. Whereas you'll walk away from a movie and you'll have like 6 things throughout the movie. And even as we're going to have this conversation, like you'll remember these random little bits and pieces really, really well. And I'll be like, oh yeah, I guess that happened. Like if I don't write it down, there's like a 90% chance I'm not going to remember it.
That's so interesting. Cause I think you're like, you're very much a big picture kind of guy too. Obviously you're a director, so you're in the details, of course, but you're in the details as it pertains to the big picture. And I'm less of that. I think I'm more of just like I can only concentrate on one thing at a time. So either I retain it or I don't, maybe. But yeah, usually like if something jumps out at me that I really liked or really didn't like, it just kind of stays with me and I can't get rid of it. So it's more of like a niggle that I can't get rid of rather than something that I want to remember sometimes. But But yeah, like it's been funny. Like doing this podcast is really, like, when we started this, it was, yeah, I do love movies. That's a great idea, and I've loved them for a long time, but it was music that was my thing, right? So, there's just so much that I've learned from the beginning until now. Obviously with the relationship with music and film is important and I've learned how important in the last couple of years, but really just filmmaking in general and the respect and like of the genre more so than I had before. I knew what it took to make an album. I knew what it took to run a band. I knew what it took to put a tour together, but to produce a film, or to direct a film, or to hell, to even star in a film, like it is, it is a labor of love from hundreds of people sometimes, all needing to do their job really well, which I respect so much. I was a football player growing up, and so it's that pure team effort. And if one person drops the ball, then the whole thing falls apart. Not so much in this case, in the case of film, but in a lot of ways it is. If the gaffer messes up, you just fire him and you get a new gaffer. But he might have screwed up a scene, and that might have been the scene, So I don't know. I've just discovered this love of film that like I didn't have when we first started, and it's been really an awesome journey. And so each week that we do this, I really look forward to it and like learning from you and like what you come to, because like you said, like I remember these like little nuggets, and that's great, but what do they mean in terms of the whole context of the whole thing, right? And that's where I think that we kind of like feed well off of each other, because you have this like bigger picture idea like that I mentioned before that I don't always have. I try to, and I've tried to develop that. I think I'm better than I was before, but still, it's the role of a director.
That's a great point, and I would absolutely agree. You've definitely gotten better at it, and I'm always floored whenever there's like this thing, and I feel like with storytelling and the craft of storytelling, sometimes there's these little things that they look little, but there's so much in there. And as almost once or twice an episode, every single episode, I'll be going through my list of garbage, and I will make a point, and either you'll counter or you'll add on top of it, and like, oh yeah, and it's also reflected by da 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 da, and I'm just like, holy crap, yeah, that's right, I need to write that down. Like, it's always just that is a great dynamic, because you are so much more in the moment. And even before the show started, like, I drift off all the time. And in school, I had a really difficult time paying attention to teachers. And I remember even in elementary, I was trying to listen to the teacher, and remember this was like first, second grade. I remember having this realization that I can't focus on what the teacher's trying to say right now. I keep going off and drifting. There was a poster with space on it, and like there was like a galaxy or something on the poster, and I just kind of kept drifting off into the poster,
into the galaxy. And I just remember having that realization, like, crap, I need to figure out how to pay attention. And I've never really gotten very good at that. I still drift off, but luckily there's other people around that don't drift off and keep us all on track. Yeah. So I'm 115 episode, and crazy.
Every single week I go through this weird arc where I don't want to do it, where I don't want to sit down and watch the movie. And then today I sat down and watched Casino Royale, and I just remember having this thought, like, stop thinking about all the notes you have to take. You're going to get to watch Casino Royale. Like, just chill the hell out and enjoy a movie, and whatever comes to you, and whatever you notice, you notice. If you don't notice anything, then so be it. Right. And last week we made a joke about how we do cover cinematography in every single episode. And I was about halfway through the movie when I had this realization, like, man, I haven't made any notes about cinematography. I guess we're not going to do it this week. And then immediately I started having all these thoughts about
noticing all the things.
So I was like, well, here we go again.
Yeah.
Nice. So what are we going to do today?
Well, we're gonna cover Casino Royale. So if you haven't seen Casino Royale, the version with Daniel Craig, obviously, pause this episode, go watch it, and then rejoin us, please.
Yeah, because we'll cover a lot of things for sure. Apparently cinematography, a little bit of the camera work. I don't have a ton there. They kept it pretty boilerplate in a lot of ways. But we will talk about storytelling, where they're rebooting a character, like Todd just said. Like, this isn't even the first Casino Royale, like, let alone the first James Bond. So we'll touch on a little bit of rebooting a character. We'll talk about 7 ingredients to a Bond film, and that's not exhaustive by any means, but these are just the 7 that I picked up while watching this iteration. And
because of 007.
Yeah.
Why? I maybe.
That's like, see, you did it again. Dang it. And we'll also touch on the ending, because that threw me for a loop, and I chewed on that a lot after the film, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
So, synopsis of the film: after earning 00 status and a license to kill, secret agent James Bond sets out on his first mission as 007. Bond must defeat a private banker funding terrorists in a high-stakes game of poker at Casino Royale, Montenegro. Directed by Martin Campbell, screenplay by Neal Purvis, Robert Wade, and Paul Haggis. Cinematography by Phil Meheux, starring Daniel Craig as James Bond, Eva Green as Vesper, Mads Mikkelsen as the Chiffre, and the Dame, Judi Dench as M.
You don't think this is a very good plan, do you?
So there is a plan. I got the impression we were risking millions of dollars and hundreds of lives on a game of luck. What else can you surmise, Mr. Bond?
About you, Miss Lind? Well, your beauty's a problem. You worry you won't be taken seriously.
Which one can say of any attractive woman with half a brain?
True, but this one overcompensates by wearing slightly masculine clothing, being more aggressive than her female colleagues, which gives her a somewhat prickly demeanor. And ironically enough, makes it less likely for her to be accepted and promoted by her male superiors, who mistake her insecurities for arrogance. Now, I'd have normally gone with only child, but, you see, by the way you ignored the quip about your parents, I'm gonna have to go with orphan.
All right. By the cut of your suit, you went to Oxford or wherever. Naturally think human beings dress like that. But you wear it with such disdain. My guess is you didn't come from money, and your school friends never let you forget it. Which means you were at that school by the grace of someone else's charity, hence the chip on your shoulder. And since your first thought about me ran to orphan, that's what I'd say you are. Well, you are. I like this poker thing. And that makes perfect sense. Since MI6 looks for maladjusted young men who give little thought to sacrificing others in order to protect Queen and country. You know, former SAS types with easy smiles and expensive watches. Rolex?
Amiga.
Beautiful. Now, having just met you, I wouldn't go as far as calling you a cold-hearted bastard.
No, of course not.
But it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine you think of women as disposable pleasures rather than meaningful pursuits. So as charming as you are, Mr. Bond, I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and off your perfectly formed house.
You noticed.
Even accountants have imagination. How was your lamb?
Skewered. On sympathizers.
Good evening, Mr. Bond.
Good evening, Miss Lind.
So, yeah, like that's
It's amazing.
one of the best scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
How was this rewatch for you? Whether good and bad, or was it all good? Was it all fun?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I wanted to go into it with like, let's be honest. Okay, I went into it with preconceived idea, which was kind of like a little mixed, right? So it was, I know what I'm getting because it's a Bond film, but I know what I'm getting because I've seen it before.
Mm.
So I'm gonna watch it like I don't want to like it, because I know what I'm getting, and because for both of those reasons: one, I've seen it before, and that I know what I'm getting because it's a Bond film, and it's this guy who just can't do any wrong, and like is just like fucking perfect and in every way. And I loved it. I loved every moment of it. Daniel Craig is so good, and there were a lot of things like he's never out of breath, pretty much ever. That first chase scene where he chases that guy, and then he finally catches him at the embassy, and he's holding him at gunpoint. After all of that, he's not even breathing heavy. Bullshit, it's bullshit. But it's kind of the same thing in that case. And because of what you just saw, like the epicness of that chase and what you just saw, I'm all right with just letting that go. Kind of like how in Star Wars you let go of the fact that you can hear the space, like the spaceships flying around and they make like loud sounds. You're like, whatever. It's Star Wars. It's awesome. So that was a scenario where I was just like, okay, that would not happen in real life. But then I remind myself, this is a little bit, bigger than, right? So if you watch a different style spy movie like the Bourne series or even Mission Impossible, right? They're shot different. The stories are different, right? For different purposes. This is more of the playboy, every girl wants him and every guy wants to be him kind of story, right? And so they adhere to that. I mean, they're rebooting I don't even know when it originally came out. 60s,
late 60s, early 70s.
70s, yeah. So they're rebooting something that's 50 years old, and so they want to adhere to the original in some ways, and his persona might be one of those ways, right? But I do like how they kind of modernized it in so many ways, obviously with the yachts and the jets and the cars and everything, and the weapons and all that stuff. But also they modernized it by introducing this female who is in many ways, not in all physical ways, but in many ways is equal mentally, right? And tricks him big time. So yeah. So anyway, for that being said, there were some concessions that I made. That was one of them, and there were a couple of others, but it was nothing that really took me out. I mean, I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna. It was kind of late at night last night when I was about to watch it, and I was like, okay, I'll watch an hour of it. Right. I ended up watching almost the entire thing, and I was like, I gotta go to bed, and I finished it this afternoon, but I just didn't want to stop it. I thought the writing was really good. It was super long. It was way longer than I thought it was going to be. But I remember seeing this in the theater and thinking, oh, it's over, and it not being over. And how cool is that? You get a whole nother story, right? You think it's over, and then you get almost a whole nother movie after that. Like it could have been Casino Royale Part 2 in some ways. And I just loved that. I remember loving that, like thinking, oh shit, it was over. Now it's not. And there's a whole, oh my God. And she's like screwing him over. And oh my gosh, but he loves her. And what, she dies? Oh my God. But she does it. And at first when I was watching it and he shoots the barrels that are holding the building up, I remember thinking, I don't remember that. Is he the reason she dies? Oh my gosh, that's traumatic. And then I saw her lock the door herself, and then she did it herself. She killed herself basically, but so that kind of frees him from the angst of being the reason that she dies. But I loved the story. I thought it was great. I thought it was really well written. And I mean, there were, it's 007, man. There might be some things where if I were writing it, I wouldn't have written that, but I'm not writing a 007 movie anytime soon. And to take on a movie that's so iconic like this and to make it your own, not just from a writing standpoint, from an acting standpoint. I mean, Daniel Craig is Bond. I mean, he is fantastic in every way. I mean, I'm 100% sure he is my favorite Bond.
Easily.
I mean, everybody can say Connery. Everybody can say whomever you want to say. And Connery was great. Don't get me wrong. He was awesome. But Craig destroys this role. And for anybody in the future who wants to try to do it, besides maybe Idris Elba.
Yeah.
Which I think, were you the one who was saying that they were entertaining that at one point? And then did they go against it, or is he?
I think there was just, they were still wanting to hold on to Daniel Craig because of how popular he's been.
Sure.
And if they could get, one or two more movies out with him, then, why wouldn't you? But yeah, he was being tossed around, and I think mostly by fans and maybe some of the executives. How do you ignore that? Like, you have Idris Elba. He's the perfect James Bond. Like, you feel that vibe off of him. But yeah, and so he was being entertained, and there was a lot of backlash and outroar from, certain segments of the world population about having a black James Bond, which is ridiculous.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
I mean, the only backlash I could see is that he's older.
Right. At this point, if we had gotten him right at that point, whenever that was the goal, he would have been perfect and could have ran out 3 or 4 good James Bond films. Mm-hmm. But yeah, now at this point, this might be a little past, his prime. not that he still can't, kick a lot of ass, as we noticed in Hobbs and Shaw. Like he still got it, but maybe starting a whole new segment of Bond films, this might be a little too late for Idris. But I wouldn't be against it, but it wouldn't probably be my top pick anymore.
For sure. What'd you think?
I had same reaction, slightly different approach. I went expecting to just love it. And the opening section, before the title, the cold open, threw me. I was like, oh no. Because the opening just wasn't as cool as I remembered it. And it's a little clunky and a little easy. His first 2 kills. It still had that
the black and white noir feel.
Yeah, which I was fine with that. It was, I think, just the general feeling of, he sits, the guy walks in and the dialogue felt a little clunky. And you could feel that they were just rushing through it, which that in and of itself I'm fine with. But this guy, reaches into his drawer and pulls out the gun. Like, there's just zero chance that a man waiting to kill you wouldn't have thought to disarm your weapon. Like, that just feels like the laziest villain like you've ever thought of. And so that section felt a little unimaginative. But I do like how it ends, where, he's like, they say the first one is like, or the second one is, and he kills him, is like considerably, and he's, finishing his thought. That I love as a great way to cut to the credits. But the opening, it just felt not quite as sleek as I think they wanted it to. And so I was kind of holding my breath like, oh my God, am I still going to love this movie? Because I own it, but I haven't watched it in, a few years now. And then again, the chase sequence happens and I'm like, oh no, I'm all in. Like, we're doing this. Yeah. We are all about this. Cause that sequence is just so high octane and relentless. Like, it takes over on the better part of 10 minutes, and it's great because I bet they probably took 3 or 4 days to shoot that thing. There was just so much going on in terms of setup, the crane shots and helicopter shots. And, you might set up for 4 hours just to get, this 2 or 3 second clip as they're running through the forest, so much time went into that thing, but I think it's a really great way to actually introduce us to Bond. Because we're kind of resetting that dynamic of Bond. And you have to understand contextually where Bond is coming from. The Pierce Brosnan films, where he is just ultra smooth. And again, he never breaks a sweat, but he never really has to, he's never challenged. He's perfectly smooth. Everything he does, even his combat, right, is just very, very flowy. Everything's very flowy and smooth with the last Bond iteration. And here in the chase sequence, we get to see that dynamic change in a very visible way, because he's chasing this guy who is just, a parkour hero. And he is, doing flips off of, cranes 200 feet in the air and, barrel rolling and just killing it. And meanwhile, Bond is not, right? I'm not going to chase you. I'm going to grab a bulldozer and I'm going to bust through all these tanks, and I'm going to bust through a wall instead of, your little cute exit through the window.
I loved that.
He just breaks through the wall.
Such a great way to introduce us to this type of Bond.
Good. And it just sets the stage for a much less glamorous, more rugged James Bond. And even at the end of that, I also loved how, he looks trapped and he looks like he's giving up. And then instead he throws down one gun, pulls out another, kills this guy, blows everybody up, and exits. Like, it's the way he operates. He's not here to do the least amount of damage. He's there to just do the job the best way that he thinks, and usually that's going to require some brute force. And it is visually reinforced with his build. He doesn't look anything like Pierce Brosnan. He looks like he's in and out of the gym, 2 hours a day, every day. And it's great. So I came away and I still had that same feeling even this time. Now I've maybe not seen this for the last 2 or 3 years, but I've definitely seen it 6-7 times. And I still get that same feeling of the movie's over. Oh, wait, we have a whole new story opening up, and the betrayal and all that fun stuff. It still grabs me, especially when at the end when he's recovering and she's sitting there and kind of confessing. Eva Green, way to sell the love. Like, you absolutely have to have that moment in order for the rest of that sequence of the film to make any sense and for any buy-in emotionally. And she absolutely just like breaks your heart with her confession. God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then and when she, so that when she gets up in the hotel, she gets up and she's going to the bank to get money. Never once crossed my mind. I've seen this movie before.
Yeah, right.
I saw this movie.
Yeah.
Never crossed my mind that she was going to double cross him. Forgot that completely because of how good that scene was before when he was in the hospital in the wheelchair, and her saying, "You can have me," just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
There's so much patient storytelling happening in that section because we're buying in. They're really taking their time. We see them lounge on the beach, and we're building up this life for them that is, going to get truncated after that moment that you're talking about. And it's great because I don't feel bad with that time. I don't feel impatient. I'm enjoying seeing them together. I'm enjoying them and seeing Bond in love and like vulnerable and committing to someone, because this is something, like you said at the beginning, we never get to see Bond in love. We never get to see him with someone. And like the soundbite that we played, a minute ago, she was right. Like his whole persona has always been that he sees women as disposable and not as some meaningful pursuit. And that's a great setup for their love affair. And ultimately, obviously, she did love him. She was kind of caught between two worlds, and we'll definitely circle back to that. But yeah, I want to get to that, so I'm going to blast through all these other notes just so that we can talk about it. Cinematography wise, I love two things. They're doing a lot of soft lighting, which is fun because they're also doing a very high contrast with the image, and the high contrast adds a lot of drama to the frame. And what I think they're also doing is it's also reflecting kind of the suit and tie imagery of James Bond by squashing everything so that you have a lot more highlights and a lot more shadows and popping out in the frame. I feel like that's just a subtle nod to the cocktail attire that he's famous for. There's also and I just love how the high contrast kind of floats really nicely with the soft lighting that is also echoed in the luxurious lifestyle of James Bond and the places that he goes and things that he does. And so they do a really great job of adding tension and drama, and at the same time luxury to the frame with just those two things, with just the soft lighting and the higher contrast. As far as like the camera work, pretty on the nose here. I mean, a lot of cranes, a lot of dollies and tripod shots when everything's going well and there's no action. And then of course the action sequences, a lot of handheld, a lot of shaky cameras, and they cut to the wides that are still going to give you like these epic crane and helicopter shots. But we're not going to hang out there for too long because there's an action sequence going on. We're going right back into that handheld and those quick cuts. And I think it goes back to the way he drinks his martini. Now, I've heard that it's not a very good martini if you're a martini lover. I don't know. I'm not very good on the whole drink things, but he likes it shaken, not stirred. And so you have this fancy drink, right, that has this combination of sophistication and, brutality. And I think that kind of defines James Bond in a nutshell. And it's reflected in his drink and, of course, in the way they shoot the film itself, because those action sequences are definitely shaken and not stirred.
Which is amazing how he orders the martini when the guy asks him if you want to shake it or stir. Do I look like I give a damn? Fucking perfect way to say I'm not your normal James Bond that you've been used to.
And I love how everyone around the table is like, yeah, me too. Hey, me too. Like, it's so good. And the annoyance of the villain of all that. Like, ugh. And of course it comes later, to bite him in the ass. Which I think is perfect too, just while we're riffing on that, because if you're playing poker, you shouldn't be drinking. Like, you need all your mental faculties. And he's over here not only playing high stakes poker, but for high stakes, globally. And he's over here drinking. And so it should punish him. He should not be rewarded for having a drink at the poker table. And they do a really good job of punishing that poor decision making in the story itself. So
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
What a great sequence.
Uh-huh.
I
remember the first time watching that, like, being super stressed out. And when he passes out before he can shock himself, I'm thinking,
how do you?
I know he's got to get out of this.
But how?
How? Yeah. Like, and then she shows up. I'm like, oh yeah, he's got a partner.
And it's great because that plays right into the rule of repeats. She brought him back to life there, but at the end of the movie, he couldn't bring her back to life. Like, he's got her on the beach and he's trying to resuscitate her. And that's just an echo of the kind of reciprocity that you want out of a film, some symmetry. And that rule of repeats is good. And this is something I'm kind of making up. I'm sure there's someone who's got a much smarter title for it. But the rule of repeats is if you can't see the same thing happen twice. And he gets resuscitated and therefore she doesn't get resuscitated. And I think it adds a sense of balance, a rightness. Like, why didn't she make it? Well, we've already seen someone else make it. And therefore the symmetry would be off if every time you did a thing, it worked. You're making a boring movie and a predictable movie. And we don't like predictability. And the same way that the first time he goes all in during the setup sequence of winning that guy's car, and then he takes his car, takes his money, takes his girl. Like, he just takes everything from this dude. He wins there, and then of course we get to later in the film after he thinks he's spotted the tell. He goes all in again, and of course he fails. And then the next time he goes all in, he wins. And so you can't see the same thing happen twice. And if you do, you're on tricky, dicey territory.
Yeah.
One of the other, as far as cinematography goes, one of the other things I thought, I don't know how to really qualify this, but at the end when they are on the beach and they're kind of enjoying their lifestyle, I assume they probably didn't use the natural lighting of the sun there. Maybe they did, but my assumption is that they didn't, just because you want to control the lighting for a really long time. And I think the easiest, quickest way to do that, because you can't always predict the clouds. Now, maybe they got out there that day and said, oh, there's no clouds. Let's just go ahead and risk it. And we can shoot faster this way. That very well could happen. There's plenty of productions that do that. But my assumption as a James Bond film is that they set up a huge, 40-foot silk or maybe 100-foot silk to block out the sun, and then set up their own lights so that you could still get that hard sun lighting and keep it consistent between the coverage of him and her as you're going into their close-ups. That seems like the safer, quicker way, but again, maybe not. Maybe they just, rolled out the sun. That's certainly faster, and especially if you're shooting in Italy or wherever they were, it might be super feasible and predictable. But I bet they had silks. If they did, I'm sure they had silks ready to go just in case, they started having cloud coverage issues.
Yeah.
But, story and writing. The humor I thought was always good, because usually the humor had a purpose. Like early in the film, he crashes that Range Rover, right? He's the fake valet, and he kind of takes these guys' cars. And the humor itself works on a number of levels. One, they're rich, and so we kind of dislike them just because they're in this snooty place, driving a snooty car, so to speak. But then they also get snarky with them, like, are you going to make me wait all day? And then he, just rear ends it into another car. And it sets off all these car alarms, and it's kind of funny. You're like, man, Bond really doesn't give a damn. But in fact, and we get a laugh out of it, but it's also creating a distraction for his entry and data theft. And so they kind of get two bangs for the buck on that. Like, we get a laugh, and it's like, oh no, it's serving a function. He's not a careless, reckless guy that M was making us to believe he is, although he might still be a little bit of that. And so it gives you the idea that his recklessness still serves a purpose. And it gave us a bit of humor. Also thought there was some humor with the dress, the whole back and forth of, I'm I'm going to wear the suit that you want me to wear. And she's going to wear the dress, and he gives her instructions like, you enter in, to distract those guys. And she comes in and distracts him. And it's funny, like we're entertained and we feel like this is just them kind of going back and forth at each other. But in reality, there's a deeper layer that they never really touch on. But it hints at her true motivations, because she was trying to distract him. She was trying to make him lose. And of course, even later in that section, we find out that she won't even stake him for the extra $5 million. And he thinks it's because she doesn't think he can win. But the reality is she thinks he can. The real reason that she's withholding that money is because she doesn't want him to win. She thinks he's very well capable. And so there's a lot of layers that are happening there that aren't immediately obvious until the movie's over and, you're watching it with hindsight. And so that's really well done in a number of ways, like the humor of it and the deeper execution, the layering of the motivations. Pretty
and
smart.
adding the American.
Yeah, adding the American as his fallout, like his bailout. Beautiful.
That was brilliant writing there.
Because we're so, I think in America we recognize that this is a British spy, but we look at James Bond as an American figure, I think, in our heads, and so we kind of forget that there is a CIA and there is another agency at work, and of course, why wouldn't the CIA be involved in this? And when he pops up, it's perfect. God.
Yeah. But it's just brilliant writing that makes me actually think that even if they don't touch on it, like they thought about it.
Yeah.
Right? They thought about, no, she would not want him to have the money. So how do we get him the money to let him continue playing? Oh, we add an American. We add the CIA. The CIA bankrolls him. And then the little quip about, do you think we need the money? At the end, what about when he asked him about the winnings? He's like, "Look like we need the money." Like,
yeah, it's so American.
So American. So American. Keep the $100 million. Whatever. We just want the sheep.
You want it.
Yeah.
You want it fair and square.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, and let's talk about the 7 ingredients and into the Bond recipe of making a Bond film. First, and this isn't exclusive to Bond, but exotic locations. You'll find this in, you mentioned Mission Impossible. The same thing in Mission Impossible. You're going to want to see a lot of exotic and beautiful locations. And the more there are, the better. And in this case, we pop into Uganda, then we go to the Bahamas, Montenegro, Italy, and that's not even to mention like London and Miami. What was funny, I noticed, I have the movie playing in the background here. And I noticed in the Bahamas, he's driving on the wrong side of the road because he's. This is just a stupid.
I doubt they were in the Bahamas.
Adds anything because his steering wheel is on the left side and he's driving on the left side of the road. And if you understand why steering wheels are where they are, it's to keep you in the center of the road so that you can see around vehicles and see what's coming. And so to have the steering wheel on the outside of the road is not safe.
Funny.
But yeah, so number 1, exotic locations. Number 2, high stakes. And by that, I mean the world. There's got to be global stakes. That's a key ingredient, I think, to Bond films. And in this case, right, it's terrorist attacks. And so we're on the edge of our seat hoping that we don't fund terrorism. And what's cool about, what I really like about Casino Royale is you never really feel intensely about the stakes from the terrorist organization. I feel like you feel more intense about just you want Bond to win and you don't like the bad guy. And to me, that's more effective because when you start getting to such these massive stakes of millions of lives are at stake, you can't empathize with millions of people.
Totally
Right? Like you have to make it so much more personal. And they do that really effectively by not focusing too much on the outcome. They mention it and it's, a point of topic, but it's much more, emblazoned through how we feel about Bond and the villain itself. And that's so much more effective and, I don't know, involving, I think.
That's so interesting you say that because normally that's what I want, in the film that's high stakes. But now that you mentioned that, I'm like, yeah, that is a reason. I do like that in this film specifically, right?
Yeah.
In like a Bourne film or something, I want high stakes everything.
Yeah.
It's just so stressful all the time, right? But in this one, it's more about Bond and his relationship with the people around him and how he gets out of scenarios. It's less about the world high stakes, which I find refreshing, because in every other type of spy movie, it's always the world's going to end, or there's nuclear, whatever. The literal biggest thing they can think of. Oh, this bad guy is going to pull an asteroid down from outer space.
Right.
Whatever. The biggest thing they can think of. But in this case, they don't make that play. They go the opposite almost. It was almost like I knew who the bad guy was. It was obvious. I mean, he cried blood, but the other real bad guys were the terrorists, right? And this guy was just basically funding them,
just a role player,
taking their money, right?
Yeah.
So, but we barely see the terrorists, and they die halfway through. So, or at least like the main ones do, not all of them, obviously. So it was very confusing from a bad guy point of view, from like a stakes point of view,
mm-hmm.
And then he stops the one guy from driving into the plane.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that he stops. So, I mean, he keeps winning, but the bad guy keeps slightly changing. Like the first bad guy he finds, he ends up killing, which was the guy who took his car and his money and his girl. And he ends up killing the dude. And the next bad guy was the guy he stopped from driving the car into the plane. And then the next bad guy is the guy who cries blood, and the main bad guy was the guys at the beginning who were the terrorists. So like there were so many bad guys, but they were just like little bad things they were trying to do.
Totally. And a lot of that happens just in the first half of the movie, right? He gets his 00 status, he kills the 2 bombers, prevents the bombing, and it's just heavy on action and establishing Bond's personality before moving into the drama. Now that we kind of know what he's capable of, we can, and to some extent, we've kind of worn out the audience. Like, oh, you're tired now. Let's feed you some story, and start moving into that. And Bond takes everything, takes it over, takes the guy's money, and that becomes kind of a theme for the rest of the film of kind of taking things from other people. And that, I think, to some degree, maybe becomes our twist or our action item on the list, so to speak, is to kind of keep stripping things away from the bad guy, not necessarily killing him, though that becomes, a result. But he never starts with that intention. Like even whenever he was chasing the guy with the scars on his face through buildings and skyscrapers and construction sites and embassies, his goal was never to kill him. He wanted to capture him. He was very explicit about that. And I think that goes throughout the entire movie. He's never really trying to kill anybody, but people get dead. He's just the byproduct of the way he does business.
Yeah.
And I love that. So yeah, number 2, high stakes. And the exception to the rule here is the emotional stakes with love. His heart is one of the stakes that come into play in the third act. That's a great, as we mentioned a little while ago, like that's a great exception that you don't get out of Bond films. At least none that I've seen. I've never, to be honest, I've never seen anything before the Brosnan films. So don't throw things at my friend Regina, like nags me on this. She's like, I can't believe you haven't seen Roger Moore. Like, I'm sorry. I'll get to it eventually, probably, maybe.
Yeah. Never.
And so I love the emotional stakes on the line here, and it really makes us care and invest in Daniel Craig as a Bond character. It's a great way to set up and establish a brand new Bond. We're doing all kinds of new things that are antithetical to maybe Bond as a character, but certainly the previous iteration. Number 3 in the Bond recipe, you need to sprinkle in a evil bad guy with a physical defect or a physical enhancement. And in this case, the guy only has the, and I think in most of these iterations, I'm not going to go through them all for spoiler reasons, but I want to say there's no physical enhancements. Like they all have defects, as opposed to maybe some of the older films that, I don't know, they have like golden hands and random shit. But they tend to go more towards the defects. And I think that's kind of speaking to evil as being a character flaw, being physically represented in the character itself, which is cool. And it's pretty identifiably Bond. I don't feel like I see this out of any of the other spy films. This is a Bond specific thing. So that's kind of cool. Number 4 of 7 is high tech. Like normally you're going to have a car with gadgets, and they're not going to be used in the way that they were intended. This is another exception to that rule. Like we get the car. He gets a sweet car, and we get a defibrillator out of left field that saves his life, and it's perfect. It's executed in exactly the right way to make us feel like this isn't too easy, and he has to earn it. That's excellent storytelling, and I love that, they're kind of saving something for later. I feel like I want to say we get more gadgets as the series moves on, but in this one, they're kind of saying, we're not going to give you all the usual stuff. We're going to give you something different and give you more to look forward to. Like we don't meet his gadget guy, Q, or whoever it ends up being. And so I love that. I love that, we kind of save the high tech stuff for later, while still managing. Yeah.
Oh no, sorry to interrupt, but and the interesting way they introduce you to the defibrillator, when he hits the button and it opens and then closes, and then the second drawer opens with the gun in it. Like it's basically like in order to get the gun, this first one has to open, and then that it makes you think like that's just the way that it happens, and that's why we see this defibrillator. You don't necessarily know what it is, but you see the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's just brilliant. Rather than he just knows to go to his car. Oh, and there's a fucking defibrillator that just happens to be there. That would have pissed us off.
Yeah.
But because we saw it. We didn't even know what it was, but we saw it at one point just for a second. We know why he's at his car when the thing opens and he pulls it out. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
He's already done his homework. He's already good. And I love that edit. It's one of these things where you can overthink storytelling sometimes, because we go from the bathroom of him throwing up, right? Taking the saline solution, makeshift salt water, and getting himself to throw up to buy some time. And then we cut straight to the parking lot of him walking up to his car. It would be really, really easy to overthink that and have him walking through the casino and stumbling around and ruining his reputation and looking like a fool. And they don't do that. Instead, we cut straight to the point of the story, which is let's get to him saving himself. And you don't feel as, I don't know, stressed out, or I don't know, just it helps the credibility of the moment to not feel like how long does this poison take to kill him? Because we've already seen him do X, Y, and Z, and now he's doing another thing. And that way it makes the buy-in of like, yeah, he's almost going to die. Like it keeps the tension high and is just a smart way. I probably would have overthought that one a little bit. But I'm glad someone else isn't. Well done, Martin Campbell.
I'm glad I didn't direct Casino Royale.
And so number 5 of the Bond recipes, a femme fatale. In this case, Eva Green. And number 6 is a betrayal. And in this case, that's Eva Green. Vesper, I should say. Vesper is a great character and a great way to name his martini. The Vesper martini, which I looked up to make sure that was in fact what that martini is called. And so they kind of gave a backstory to the martini. And yeah, you're always going to have some betrayal, or, someone did something that, you couldn't see coming. That's the twist, right? Of most spy movies in and of itself, because spy work is all about craft work, the ability to engage in a plot. And plots, of a government, espionage type, of course, there's double crossing involved, and that's just goes with the territory. And so you're always anticipating a double cross. And they do a great job of giving us a scapegoat early on with his buddy Mathis, and we think, oh yeah, he's the bad guy because Vesper would never betray us. And of course, that's a great, and it serves so many useful functions because we find out that Vesper was, his betrayer. And at the end, when Bond is talking to M, she's like, I'm glad you learned your lessons. Should we cut Mathis loose? He's being investigated right now pretty hardcore. And he's like, nope, stay on it. She's like, okay. I like where your head's at. Because he's like, I trust nobody anymore. And that's just perfectly. So they get a lot of mileage out of Mathis as a false move, a red herring, and then of course as character motivation for Bond in the way he now sees the world because of the way he was betrayed. Perfect, really, really good storytelling.
I will say that I wasn't crazy about him explaining everything during the games.
Oh, sure.
The game to Vesper, I felt like it was like, really, you could have. That was lazy. You could have found a way. Like maybe the dealer says how much is in the pot at one point, or something like that, or you hear someone. I don't know. Like there's just some other creative way to say that, but they do it like multiple times. I want to say like at least 3, if not 4 times. He whispers to her, something that's like, oh, you really didn't have to. Yeah, you really didn't have to feed that to me.
It's funny. I mean, I understand why they did it, just because this is such a broad, based, appeal movie that you understand. We're going to be getting people like you and I in the audience, but you're also going to get people who may not think through all those aspects, and they may not be understanding that the stakes right now are he thinks he sees the tail, and therefore he's going all in. And so they announce it for the people in the back seats that are maybe not as sharp, and helping to create the stakes, no pun intended, because they're playing poker. There are literal stakes, but the stakes beyond that, need to be explained of not only how poker is played, but what Bond is thinking in that moment. Because the other way to do that is much like, the setup, which was, let's, do a close up of him scratching his temple, and then do a close up of Bond seeing him scratch his temple. And then Bond goes all in. Like those 3 cuts tell what he's thinking and what he's trying to do. And that would have been, the simpler, swifter, less clumsy way to do it. And they went for, let's, broadcast this out to everybody so that we can set it up and fail.
And I guess it was important for Mathis to say that.
Kind of reestablishing that he understands everything that's happening, and therefore he may have been the one to tell.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
For him to say there, that's the tell. Okay, he knows what the tell is. So then later on, when he realizes that Mathis is the one who told Le Chiffre that he about the tell that Bond realized, then that does make sense.
That's a really, really good point, because we've now established multiple times that he understands, and therefore by having him say it, mansplaining it to Vesper, then we have a much better chance of remembering not only who Mathis is, but why he was the betrayer.
Because he came in late in the story. Because my other thought was, why didn't they have Vesper say it? Vesper could have said it to him, and then it could have been, and then she could have mentioned to Bond that she noticed, and she told Mathis. In which case, then Bond could still be like, "Oh, Mathis knew," later on.
Yeah.
But but Mathis comes in so late in the movie that you're right. We kind of need to establish him in some way so that you remember him, so that it's not completely out of the blue when Bond is like, "Oh, Mathis," or whatever, and goes after him. Even though it is a little bit out of the blue. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, though. Half of what 007s realize in movies is very out of the blue. That no one would ever be like, oh, that's right, so-and-so was... Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that goes to a very important distinction between a spy movie and a mystery. They are not the same thing. And their realizations aren't realizations that we should have. And that's just part and parcel of watching them work. And that's okay. Like, it's not what you should expect coming into a spy film, is being able to guess the ending. Hopefully not. I mean, maybe you guess who the betrayer is, but beyond that, you should just be there for the ride and for the banter, especially.
I would make a terrible spy. I would die on day one. I would trust everyone, and everyone would kill me in terrible ways at the same time.
I would also die for the exact opposite reason. I would never trust anyone, and therefore I would never have any allies, and I would get killed by working on my own.
Oh no, everyone who didn't kill me would like me.
All right.
But it wouldn't matter because I would be dead. Well, what's number 7?
Number
Sorry, I keep
7.
derailing the conversation.
Yeah, no. Number 7 of the Bond recipe is cocktail attire events. We need a reason for Bond to suit up and drink a martini.
Look good. Yeah.
And you have to have those events. They're not part and parcel to every spy film. Now, they are often in there because we like to see our spies, doing glamorous things. But Bond is inseparable from that. Even in this one, like, the whole movie revolves around his ability to get into a suit.
Yeah.
And he even has to change it multiple times. Like, it's absolutely perfect. And then I threw in a secret number 8, but this is endemic to most action films, that there's going to be a boss fight, there's going to be explosions, there's going to be henchmen, and that's all fine. That's most spy films and action films in general. And normally it bothers me. In this case, it didn't, that there's henchmen who just keep getting killed over and over again.
Dude, yeah.
In this one, it just didn't. It never really caught my attention because it always felt natural. It always felt earned, and it always made sense to me. Not only why they're there and how they got there, but also why he's better. And I think they mostly do that through creating a lot of tension for making Bond so scrappy. He really has to work for every yard he gets. And it always just felt very, very earned. Yeah, so that's more or less. And again, that's not my definitive list. I would have to watch a lot more Bond films, but that seems like a reasonable starting point of
That's
7
good.
Bond things. Now for the last section of my notes, Vesper. So watching this, she kills herself. How did that feel to you in the moment?
It felt bad. I mean, it felt terrible, because he still loved her. He still wanted to save her. And I think that she still loved him. I think they both still loved each other. And she just wouldn't be able to live with herself. Even if he said it's okay and forgave her. And she knew that. And so she did that. I remember being heartbroken watching this in the theater.
Yeah.
I just, I wanted them to, be happy together, and whereas somebody who might be wiser in films and like know what to expect and see things might have seen that coming, or seen the fact that, they've run off together and it's not going to work out coming. But I didn't necessarily. I thought she was going to die, but not by betraying him. I thought she was going to die because they were, somebody's going to kidnap her, and that was going to lead into the next Bond film, and he was going to want to get revenge. And that didn't quite happen, but that was why I didn't see the double cross coming. At first when I I thought it was going to end with him in the hospital and her there, and we love each other, blah, blah, whatever. But then it kept going. That scene kept going, and after maybe a couple of minutes, I think maybe when it didn't leave after the guy gave them the money, after they did the balance transfer, when it didn't leave after that, I thought, okay, this is going to go somewhere else. And then it went somewhere else, and I thought, okay, if this doesn't end in the next 60 seconds, then we have a whole other section of this movie. And it didn't end. I said, okay, there's another section in this movie. She's definitely going to die. but I didn't see it as her being the one that was gonna betray him, or that there would be any betrayal at all. Really, I just thought the guy with the eye patch that she sees, I thought that, because her reaction was really like, huh, that was weird.
Yeah.
Instead of,
hey, I think someone's watching us, or there's someone
yeah, it was
here.
like that. It was like, it was like a, that was strange. Other than instead of like oh shit, that's the dude I'm supposed to meet up with, later. Like, I totally did not get that vibe from that moment. But I also knew she was going to die because Bond didn't see that guy. Bond always sees the guy, right? He always knows when he's being followed, when someone's around that's bad or whatever, but his defenses are completely down. So something bad was going to happen. And he isn't going to die at the end of the film because it's a Bond film. Bond does not die. So it had to be her. There had to be some kind of cost to that. So
nice. Yeah, I think every time except this time, every time I have had the exact same reaction as you, like devastated, because we were building a future and that was a great future, and I liked them together, and I liked all of that. And so, but this time I was watching it, and I was trying to remember, how does she die? I remember like that she drowns, but I thought it was a different kind of drama. And I see her with the key, and she locks herself in, and she commits to it. And I was, every other time I've been heartbroken, but this time I was like, wait, why is she killing herself? That's dumb. Don't do that. And so I spent a lot of time after the fact. I was still upset that she was dead, but I was confused as well. And I realized that there was a storytelling conundrum that they had right there, which is, if she does not kill herself, we hate her for what she's done, and we don't trust her. She can't earn our trust back because she's already betrayed him. But by killing herself, we know she's human and feels guilty for her actions, right? She betrayed Bond and her country. But, some like me may feel confusing in the moment to the viewer, but we do feel bad for Bond, and it is a great setup for, giving us a guiltless and childless, for other reasons, playboy persona of Bond. And so that was just a really elegant way to kind of solve a storytelling issue of, we can't trust her. We're not going to like her because of what she's done to Bond. And if we could trust her, then we could like her again, of course. But we felt that they could see that coming, and it made the most sense to have her sacrifice herself to kind of redeem her and to make her likable again. And also to break our heart even further, because, we see what Bond could have had, and now he's completely distrustful of everyone. And he even calls her a bitch. And it's just like, damn, bro, you were ready to leave your one true passion, because they do a great job early on of setting up that, he cares for nothing else. Like, he is all about the job. And in so many ways, and I freaking wrote it down, and I can't find my note now.
But they also use it as the ability to establish more of Bond as a human, right? Because when after he kills the last guy, doesn't even think, he dives into the water to try to save her, right?
Yeah,
she
that's right.
She's the only reason. Like, he loses all the money. She's the reason why, and he doesn't care. He wants to save her life. He loves her. And then he will not leave her. He does not leave until he gets the gate open, and he's reaching for her until he actually reaches her and pulls her out. Like, I didn't expect him to come up with her body.
Yeah. You just expected to.
Right. So they take it all the way to the end, man. Not only does he dive in to save her without even thinking, he stays underwater and breaks into the gate, breaks the lock, and then will not leave her until he reaches her and brings her up and puts her on the ground and gives mouth to mouth and tries to resuscitate her. All of these things, and he's heartbroken. You can tell. I mean, he gets up and he leaves because he's James Bond, right?
Yeah.
But
He's a master of his body. Like, he's not ruled by sex or pain. Everything, money, it all takes a backseat to the job. And this was the one time that he gave up, that autonomy to something other than work. And of course, like you said, it bit him in the ass, and he just walks away. He's like, yep, never again. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have.
What would you give it?
Ooh, I'm watching the scene right now where he's in the chair and the guy's swinging the rope.
God, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't
so
even.
Brutal.
I invited my wife to watch this with me, and she said no because of the torture scene. Cannot do that. She didn't even have balls, so it's just like
empathy.
Like, you can't even imagine.
This is a tough one to rate. Like, I think for me, this is like an 8.5. I want to go to a 9. I don't really have a good reason for why not. It's got pretty much everything I want out of a movie. It's got romance. It's got amazing action. It's great acting. Like, yeah, I don't know. But I'll give it a 9. I think I just talked myself into a 9.
Okay.
So.
Nice. Yeah, I'm giving it a solid 8.
Nice.
I think that, there were a few things that just took me out of the story, and they might have been necessary, and that's fine. But they just took me out. But I loved so much about it. I loved the story itself. I loved the acting. I loved the writing. A lot of what happened, I just really loved, and the rewatchability is definitely there. I mean, I could watch it again tomorrow and be entertained, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to give Bond films any higher than that, only because I'm more of a Bourne Identity kind of spy movie person. That's a little bit more real world, realistic, where they are out of breath when they run and they get hurt. I guess he gets hurt a lot in this film. So this is definitely the best Bond film. He's the best Bond. I will say all of that easily.
Yeah, this is my favorite, my personal favorite, even of the Daniel Craig's. Like, this is easily my favorite Bond film.
Yeah, and so I a solid 8, easy, maybe an 8.5 on a good day.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what are you going to recommend this week?
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with the British spy theme and go with Kingsman.
Ooh.
Yeah, fantastic film that I loved right out the gate, and I didn't know much about it when I saw it, and I walked out like, oh my God, you talk about like action fight sequences, and Colin Firth in this film is just like, I mean, you don't, you think Kingsman and you think Colin Firth, and you don't think a super spy, and yet he just destroys in this film. It's like the casting is so fantastic in this film, and it's just a lot of fun to watch, and it's really rewatchable. So yeah, Kingsman.
Nice. I'm going to recommend another movie by Martin Campbell, who directed this, called The Foreigner. Stars Jackie Chan. And his most dramatic role I've ever seen him in. He is excellent. The movie is fantastic. And it also stars Pierce Brosnan, a former Bond character. And so, highly recommend it if you want something that, once again, combines drama with action. And if you want to see Jackie Chan as a really good actor, you should definitely go check out The Foreigner. I think that's also streaming on Netflix at the moment. I would have to double check on that, but
he's also really good in the new Karate Kid. With,
no kidding. Yeah, Jayden Smith.
Yeah, Jayden Smith. We went through. My son loves karate movies and kung fu stuff, and so we watched all the Karate Kids. I can tell you which. We should just do the trilogy of the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
I have so much to say.
Really? On all 3 of them?
On all 3 of them. I have so much to say. about those movies.
Oh my God, Daniel Russo.
Don't even get me started. But the one with Jayden Smith and then Jackie Chan as Mr. Miyagi, he's freaking phenomenal in it. He's almost better than the original Mr. Miyagi, who is fantastic. He is the one who he makes those films. But yeah. So Jackie Chan is just a great actor in general.
Yes, and I want you. We talked about this before recording an episode a couple weeks ago. You have not seen Community, the TV show. There's an episode where they reenact Karate Kid to some extent. If you could just watch that one episode, I think it'll make you want to watch more Community. But you should just watch that one right now, seeing as you're so in tune with Karate Kid. I think
so in tune with Karate Kid. Put him in the body bag.
Sweep the leg. Nice. Very cool. So stay tuned. Next week, we're going to cover Love Jones. It's streaming right now on, I want to say, HBO. HBO Max and probably all 75 HBO apps that are out there. It's kind of wild. But yeah, you should be able to check that out. And it has Lorenz Tate, Neal Long. It's just a good old-fashioned mid to late 90s romance film.
Cool.
And don't forget to subscribe, review us on iTunes. Leave us a note if there's something that you want us to talk about or whatever, especially if you say it in a review. Man, I've been listening to this new podcast about stock trading, and they just started, and they have almost 400 reviews. They've been going for like 2 weeks now, and they have 400, and it just shot them up. It shot them up the rankings, like right behind Gary V. And
what?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm just so envious of those guys. I mean, it's a good, I guess it's an okay podcast. Really good information.
They're talking about money.
They're talking about money.
That's what everybody needs more of right now.
And they have a massive, Twitter following, and I think they have a big Discord following. And so they just, and I'm like, So if you don't believe us, the reviews really do help. And we're not just saying that to have something to say at the end of every episode. Like it really does help. So if you haven't,
we don't need more things to say.
We really don't. That would be really cool. We'd appreciate it, and happy to read a review. Whoever does one next. My hats off to everyone who has left one. We know some of you are already on top of it, and even if you don't, we still love you. You're welcome back. You're in the fold. And if you want to drop a note on this specific episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/Casino Royale. And there's going to be a link in there because I also forgot, I wanted to touch on how they destroyed the building. They rebuilt a section of Venice on a Hollywood backlot and then sank it. It's absolutely incredible.
Oh my God.
And so I will link that in the show notes that you can find at thepestlepodcast.com/Casino Royale.
I can't wait to watch that. Jeez.
Freaking cool.
And the quote of the day we'll leave you with is from Jackie Chan. Do not let circumstances control you. You change your circumstances. I mean, that is just life, man. Why is it that, guys like Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee are the ones who they get it,
there's so much discipline that goes into mastering your body that I would assume there has to be a ton of hangover with mental fortitude and the ability to analyze. And I've always heard that about, martial arts, is that it's not something that you use as a weapon. It's an attitude. It's not just self-defense, but it's a way of life, not to be, nickel bubblegum wrapper prophetic here. But it is just kind of an attitude towards life, and it's echoed through how you control your body in your craft, in martial arts. And I certainly don't have that.
Well, this is just interesting because this is a great quote because it puts power in your hands, right? It allows you to really understand and that you have your own fate in your own hands. And you mentioned Gary Vee earlier. He's such a great like, say what you will about him, because he's very aggressive and he's very like, you either do this or you don't, and he's
pretty black and white.
Don't.
Yeah,
he's very black and white. And you know, we talked, you know, last week, and if you're interested, go listen to the Steve Jobs episode. But we talked about like these types of people, these types of very aggressive black and white people. Do they need to exist in order for things to change, for things to be different, or to happen that wouldn't necessarily happen? And
progress.
It's kind of polarizing conversation, even with my wife and I. She doesn't think that they do, but I do. I think that they do. I think that people like Gary Vee need to exist. And people like that because they make you realize that you only have one life. And I'm 40 now. And, you know, maybe some people listening are older and they think 40 is young. I feel young, but when I was 20, I thought 40 was a fucking lifetime away. I was never going to be 40. And now I am. And so you can say that maybe my mortality is coming into play, or it in my head, or not. But the point is that kind of stuff really matters. Like when you say you've only got one life, I'm like, oh yes, oh my God, you're right, and half of it is gone. You know what I mean? But when I'm 20, I'm not thinking half of it's gone. I'm thinking I'm only 20. But you need to realize when you're 20, when you're 15, when you're 25, when you're 30, whatever day you realize that you are going to die, and it's not the knowledge that you're going to die. It's the realization that you're going to die. You need to do things. If you have a goal, you got to go get it. If you don't like where you're at, you change your stars. You know, like it's a movie. You can name it later, but you have the power to do that. And I love this quote because it gives you that power back. If you feel like that you don't have that power, if you feel like life is beating you down, maybe there's some things you can't change. But why worry about those? Because you can't change those. Try to change the things you can. It's easy for someone like me to say that when I'm not in a situation like that. But I have been in situations like that, and I have changed my circumstance in those moments. Sometimes I haven't, and sometimes it takes a long time to do that. But
yeah, because to me, I read a quote like this, and I don't try to get too dogmatic about it, like in the sense that you can control everything. Like, obviously you can't, but I don't think this mindset is going to make any situation worse. The idea that you can change your circumstances and that you can respond to life in any way that you choose, it's probably never going to make your situation worse. It should sober you up with whatever you're faced with and empower you to try to navigate it the best way you know how, instead of just immediately, admit defeat. And sometimes maybe admitting defeat is how you take control over it. But there's a difference between being defeated and choosing a path. And I feel like this is just an empowering way to look at life, and can come in handy.
Absolutely. I got so much I want to say about this. I'm not going to. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Join us next week. We'll be covering Love Jones, so make sure to go watch that beforehand, and leave us a review, please. They make a huge difference, and thank you to everybody who has already. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.